Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the True Life Podcast. It is the first Tuesday of the month. And so, for those of you who regularly watch, you are in store for a treat, as you know. And for those who may not know what happens on this day, we have the incredible Reverend Dr. Jessica Rochester as an ordained interfaith minister with a doctorate in divinity. She's a transpersonal counselor. She trained in the work of Dr. Roberto Assagioli and trained with Dr. Stanislav Grof from 1986 to 2018. She's been a workshop leader, a teacher, and in private practice. She continues to lecture on consciousness, non-ordinary states of consciousness, self-discovery, spiritual development, and personal transformation. She is also the Madrinha, I may have pronounced that wrong, forgive me, and president of the Sceaux de Montréal, a Santo Daime church she founded in 1997 in Montreal, Canada. From 2001 to 2017, she worked with the Health Canada to achieve the recognition of the Santo Daime as a legitimate religion and the right to import the Santo Daime Sacrament for ritual use. In June 2017, this mission was accomplished, and Sceaux de Montréal received an exemption to import and serve the Santo Daime Sacrament. She is also an incredible friend of the show and an incredible teacher and leader, and I have tremendous respect for her. Dr. Jessica, thank you so much for being here today. How are you?
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's always a joy to be with you. Thank you. And such fun to discuss these deep topics with you and try and make them available for everybody. To try and take sometimes some difficult concepts and experiences that not everybody has and try to make a bridge between these concepts and everybody's everyday understanding of them and why do we talk about these things and why are they important to talk about? And like that conversation in Canada didn't really happen until really recently. I mean, sure, in small little bits and pieces here, people would have conversations, but a larger conversation with the community has not really happened. And so today we're going to talk about, you've been so kind to invite me to talk about.
Yeah.
I recently, last year, published two books, Ayahuasca Awakening, and volume one is, well, the main title is, a guide to self-mastery, to self-discovery, self-mastery, and self-care. And, we've been dancing around through concepts in volume one for a little while. And then we thought it might be fun to talk about some of the cornerstones of self-care. And in my world, there's four of them. So what is self-care? We're going to start with that today. And what are those cornerstones? And for me, it begins with self-awareness. Then the second is self-love, and then self-respect, self-responsibility. And so all of these important foundational aspects of self-care. And so today we're going to be talking about self-awareness, is because that's where we all have to start. If we think about a baby comes into the world and it's like, where am I? And what's all this? And, the eyes aren't quite working and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And so when we look at young children, they are just complete bundles of awareness. They're looking at everything. Everything is new. They want to taste it, touch it, smell it, feel it. Okay, well, that's an issue when you have small children under the age of 2, because then that's when they go into the dog bowl and they want to taste the dog food and stuff like that. So, we have to be careful, but this awareness of the world around them and this innate longing to discover everything, we're born with it. And what happens to that incredible self-awareness and curiosity is that it gets narrowed down by the demands of everyday life. If we have an environment, let's say at home and at school, that encourages curiosity, encourages exploration, if we have that, then we are able to develop our natural inclinations. We find that we can channel curiosity into various sports and activities and interests and art and science and things like that. And we can maybe get a little telescope set or a microscope sad or something, and or how the body works, and so all of this curiosity or whatever draws us, we can start to study and we can learn in that. And so, a wise family looks at young children, and instead of trying to box them into what society thinks we should be doing right now, what culture demands. I'm appalled when I see families with really young children and they've got, okay, I'm going to be really out there right now, but I once saw down in the United States, I'm sorry, but I have to say it. I once saw, it had to be a 2-year-old in a stroller, and the mother was pouring Coke into a baby bottle.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. So,
Yeah.
the mental equivalent of that, okay? Okay, that was a very physical thing, and we're all shuddering. Those of us who were parents, and especially those of us who are like really kind of more naturally, we like the more natural,
Right.
organic, healthy lifestyle. It took everything for me not to say something, by the way. Sit it up. Don't just keep walking. Just keep
Right.
walking. There's nothing to see here. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to do. Okay. So if we do that to our kids mentally, if we fill them up
Mm.
from a young age, if we do that with all of these concepts and precepts that come from social media, so that our 3-year-old wants to be a TikTok star when they grow up, okay, what are we doing about our natural world?
Yeah.
How are we teaching them about this wonderful awareness instead of it all focusing down on what's in the box that our culture says is this is the now, this is the fashionable now, this is desirable now? How do we encourage that natural curiosity and that awareness to mature through the years into self-awareness and awareness of our interrelatedness between ourselves, nature, community, and the divine? Is this making some sense over there in your box?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that the world of relationships around us begins with the relationship with ourselves, and we need to desensitize. We need to get away with the conditioning so that we can relearn relationships with ourselves, so that we can have relationships with everybody.
Yes. And you know, whatever biases, prejudices, kind of narrow blocks of cultural or religious or traditional, information we receive as we're growing up, all of that will either encourage self-awareness and awareness of these extraordinary interdependency issues that we all have with,
Right.
I have to breathe air, drink water. If I want to stay alive, eat food. Okay, I need hydroquebec, otherwise I can't, I need Montreal to clean the water so that it can come through my taps. And so we're interdependent. And the awareness of this, I think modern society has somehow removed the most basic information that we can receive as young children about awareness. And this is why it is the cornerstone in almost all spiritual traditions, as they try to peel away all the things that you thought you learned about life and yourself and all these, let's call them belief systems. And I don't mean just spiritual or religious ones, I mean about what life is about. And so most true spiritual, especially the Eastern ones, were about awareness and meditation and practices that increase your awareness. And so when East met West in the late 60s and through the 70s, what happened is these techniques of self-awareness and awareness and consciousness entered into Western civilization. And many of us threw our arms open and said, welcome. Others said, bad beliefs, So, where are we now with awareness and self-awareness and what we can encourage our culture to develop? Because what's the opposite of self-awareness and awareness? What's the opposite?
Ignorance,
Yeah, denial.
denial.
Yeah, denial.
Yeah, that's a great way to. Yeah.
Yeah, denial.
Mm.
That's tough, eh?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, denial. Not me polluting the earth. And in our
Yeah.
culture, it's like, hey, I can have 5 kids. I have the money. I can have 3 cars. I'm paying for it. I'm paying my taxes. Yeah, but over there, that's happening. There's no
Yeah.
water over there. There's no food over there. The glaciers are melting. And hello, stop breeding. Sorry, you're probably going to get nasty chats over that remark. But you know what? There's too many
Bring
people
them.
on the planet. We have this conversation before. So awareness, awareness, awareness. The opposite I'm suggesting is denial, because it's all here for us. All we need to do is open, and it's here. Hmm? Okay. And so let's talk about the mechanism of denial for a moment.
Sure.
Why do we deny?
Pain,
Questions?
I think. I think that it is this idea of pain mixed with authority that causes us to be conditioned to deny.
That's a good one. I like
Thank you.
that. Yeah, I like that. So, yeah, why do we deny? Well, we can deny on many different levels. First of all, we can deny things. Denial is the first stage in the grieving
Right.
process. Kubler-Ross, her
Right.
hallmark
Kubler-Ross.
work in grief. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, for those of you, if it's possible, there's people on the planet who haven't heard of her. Okay,
There
go,
probably is.
go find out. Okay, her groundwork work. Her and Stephen Levine. Okay, and Ramdas, groundwork in grieving and processing grief work and everything. And denial is the first thing, is because we don't want to feel pain. We don't. We don't want to feel pain. And so when the doctor says, I'm not so happy with these blood tests, I think we better, look a little
Yeah.
deeper. The first thing for a lot of people is deny, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Even people who are given their diagnosis say it's a mistake.
Mm,
And so we don't want to feel pain. We don't want to feel fear. We don't want to feel all those uncomfortable feelings, right? They're uncomfortable and we don't want to feel them. And if we open to them, it feels like they'll be overwhelming. And then what do we do if we open the door to, if we say, okay, the door of denial has been closed, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to take the next step forward. The first thing we have to do is deal with whatever's there, the feelings, usually anger, sadness, depression, bargaining, etc., fear, all of those things, shame, you know, all of those things that move around inside of us and take so much space and get in the way of our happiness,
mhm.
okay, which we're all told we should have and we have a right to have. Instead of happiness is something that comes and goes like sunny days. When it's there, totally enjoy it, and and then try to create it in your everyday
Right.
life, but don't think that it's an end goal, that it's a place of arrival. So back to awareness. So the lack of awareness is denial. The lack of awareness comes from social, cultural, family, educational structures that got too tight, that we have to learn how to grow beyond. So, how do we return? How do we increase our self awareness? Well, there's lots of practices that'll help you do that. First of all, there's the intention. I'd like to be more self aware. What do I start with? My body. Is my body relaxed? Is it tense? So there's these wonderful exercises that help bring us into our body to notice that I get tense when this happens, or
Mhm.
my stomach turns, or my heart pounds, or I'm really open and happy when that's happening. And so we learn to let our body teach us, because our body has its own instincts that we need to be aware of, and they're hardwired. George, we all have them.
Right.
Fear, anger, they're there. It's not like we sit
Agreed.
back and go, I think I'm going to get angry over this. Okay.
Right.
I think I might be frightened of that. It's no, it's there.
Yeah.
It's just there. And so we're hardwired. Like every creature on the planet is hardwired with this. It's part of physical matter reality. And so how do we manage with those things? So some cultures, and the Eastern ones are terrific for this, is they have developed techniques for increasing self-awareness. So whether it's yoga or Tai Chi, some martial arts, relaxation techniques, whatever technique feels right for you. Some people meditate when they're walking. Some people, that's Vipassana insight meditation. For me, when I'm swimming, it's almost a meditation because it's in the be here now.
Yeah.
When you're eating, just eat. When you're walking, just walk. When you're swimming, just swim. Let everything else go. So bringing our awareness to our body, realizing, oh, I keep eating even though I'm full. Or wait a minute, I'm controlling how much I eat. I'm only eating 2 carrot sticks and a slice of celery and, one tiny cube of cheese. And what am I doing? My body keeps telling me it wants more.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about? And so our relationship to our body with self-awareness, we start to understand a completely different relationship. Did you have a question about that, or?
Well, I think this a relevant point is something you brought up in your book that talks about the way we tend to see the here and now and hold our thoughts. And in book 1, you talk about an indigenous philosopher, forgive me for not remembering his name, but the quote was something along the lines of, the thoughts in our head can be like the wind. They blow in and we
Mhm.
stay with them and they blow out. I thought maybe you could address that a little bit more of the way other people see that. I think that's important.
Yeah, well, that's a really good intro because after awareness of the body is awareness of the mind. Okay, now
Perfect.
what a tricky thing this is. How do we get our mind to study our mind? Okay,
So
well,
meta.
through awareness, because it depends on the model we're working with. If we believe that we have a soul that's above and beyond, that's wider than, longer, bigger, however, existed before will exist
Yes.
afterwards. If you believe that we have a spirit or a soul or a consciousness, whatever words you're comfortable with, and that we have a body and that we have a mind, okay, but we're not our mind and we're not our body, then we have awareness of our thoughts. We can see the thinking process. We can attach to it, or we can breathe and relax and let it be. There's many wonderful Eastern sayings, that thoughts are like the birds in the air. You can't stop them from flying through, but you can prevent them from building a nest. Okay, so we have, what is it, 60,000 thoughts a day, average, 90% same as yesterday, 10% new thinking. It's not bad. Okay, and so we can become aware of our thoughts. And this is really important because what are we thinking? A friend of mine many years ago said to me, do you think your thoughts or do your thoughts think you?
Mm. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think, how do you grow your hair, right? How do we do that? Like it's. I think it goes back and forth for me. I try to be conscious of them, but there's times where my thoughts are me. They do think me, and maybe that's a good meditation. Maybe that's a good way to bring yourself back.
Well, I'm going to help you,
Thank you.
consider other options.
Okay.
I and my thoughts are one. Okay. And, because that's a deep attachment. That's where we lose our identity in a thought form. And what are thought forms? Okay, thought forms are something. Now, we're going to borrow a little bit from neuroscience. So, if there's any neuroscientists out there, I wanted to give you a nice shout out for all the wonderful work that you're doing on studying the brain and the neural pathways and how thinking processes create a 6-lane highway to a certain information or story. And the more we visit that story or information, the bigger the highway becomes. And if we realize that that story information is not healthy for us, then we stop visiting. Okay. And that's a whole process into itself is how do we, and then after time, our brain recognizes, oh, awareness or consciousness is not going there anymore. They're not taking that book out of the library. It can move to the back shelves and now it can move to the back stacks and now it can go in the basement. Okay. And so instead of right up front when you first walk in the door, there's that book. And so this is what our clever little brain does. It figures out the things that we visit very frequently in our mind and creates strong neural pathways to that and connects them, makes a strong connection. And if we don't visit, then those neural pathways shrink down and shrink down. This is just my understanding of And I stand to be corrected if I'm not getting it right. And so how fascinating is that our actual physical brain develops pathways to stories don't even exist, some of them. It's just
Hmm.
our distorted version of something that we believe happened or want it to happen or some fantasy that we have. Okay. Some distortion of a childhood experience. Okay.
It's interesting to think about the relation. For me, my mind automatically jumps to the next idea of how, even though those destinations may not be real, everyone has a sort of idea of what that same destination is. I don't know if my words accurately explain this, but if I think of let's say I'm a Christian, then someone else that I go to communion with is also a Christian. And they could have, even though we're next to each other and we're singing the same Psalms or we're talking about the similar saints, we both have an idea of this destination that can be radically different. And in fact, I might not even want to go to his destination, or she may think my destination is crazy. So I know that's kind of out there, but that's when I think of the neural pathways and I think of the highways we connect to get to this place. It's so similar, but yet so different at the same time.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what I think I'm hearing you say,
Okay.
okay, is that you're you're imagining that there could be two people in the same environment hearing the same songs, singing the same songs, hearing the same prayers, and yet within themselves they may be having a very different experience of the connectedness to that which they are praying and singing about.
Yes, and those connections that feel the same to us, like, it's so strange to me that the connection we feel because we believe that
Yeah.
may not actually be, or doesn't it not I'm having difficulty in describing, but yes, that, but how can that be when we have two complete different ideas of that destination? Why do you and I feel such camaraderie together thinking about these things when in fact our ideas could be totally different? Isn't that's so strange to me? We're growing together even though we are pluses and minuses, or even though we have. It's difficult for me to describe. Does that make any sense at all?
Well, what I think I'm hearing is that you're seeing the duality. You're
Yes, thank you.
seeing you're
Well put.
seeing the duality of every experience. That,
Yes.
let's say you go take a walk on the beach and there's a campfire and people are singing campfire songs and you
Yeah.
go, oh, I love those songs, I remember them from camp. Okay. And you say, hey, can I just sit on the edge and sing along? And they say, yeah, come on and sit and sing. Okay. So you're singing your campfire songs and everybody's having a great time around the fire, and then it breaks up and everyone goes home. Okay. Now what happened there? You didn't know the people. You have no idea what they believe. Okay, what they think, how they live their lives. They could be astronauts. They could be, carpenters. It doesn't matter. You met in unity on something. You met in unity on something. You shared an experience that
Hmm.
was meaningful. And so it's the shared experience that brings you together. The same way if you go into a restaurant and everybody loves the food and loves that restaurant, and everybody's enjoying their food and it's a fabulous restaurant, but you don't know them. You've been in a restaurant and it's somebody's birthday and the waiters come along and they put something with a little sparkly on it or a candle or something. And the waiters start singing, happy birthday to the birthday person. And you know what? Half the people in the restaurant will join in singing happy
Yeah.
birthday. They don't know this person, but it's a relatedness.
Hmm.
We're relating to something, to the unity that exists beneath all of our individuality. So we're individuals and we're one. We're back to quantum physics. It's
Yeah.
the pulse and it's the wave. It's the pulse, it's the wave. Make sense?
So is that when you are aware of the relatedness, are you aware of the self? Are you seeing yourself in the other? Is that the awareness factor of it?
That's part of it. That's an important part of it. Our ability to see ourselves and
Yes.
others.
Yes.
Our
Yes.
ability to see our commonality. And this is such an important part of awareness. Here I'm moving beyond my, individual wants, needs, desires, and drives. I'm expanding beyond that to see, to have empathy
Right.
to others, to community, to nature, to the divine. I'm having empathy and relating to now. This is all the key parts of awareness. Okay. To be aware of my body, to be aware of my thoughts, to be aware of my interconnectedness and my need of people. And, as we go along, if we're curious and open minded, we find out, yeah, there's people we like, there's people we don't like, there's people we can trust, there's people we don't trust. And that's the reality. That's the reality. Okay. Yeah. So, nobody says, oh, I love everybody and I like everybody. I've never been a person like that. Okay. Who really, really, maybe Mother Teresa could say it. I don't know, but I don't know about you, but I'm not in her category. She's a few lifetimes, way many lifetimes ahead of me, right?
Sure.
So,
All of us.
yeah. So maybe there's some people who could say, yeah, I came and I loved everybody and I gave to everybody, but I'd have to say that way down deep inside of themselves, there's a moment where they went, I don't like that person very much, or I don't like that behavior, or I don't like this, or that makes me uncomfortable. And how do I keep my heart open even when that makes me uncomfortable and I don't like that? That's the challenge. Okay, self-awareness. So we're talking about denial. So we can deny our body. We can deny the care of our body. This is a big problem in our society. We have people who sit in front of computers all day, people who don't get enough exercise, people who, these are, gotta take those off, they're annoying me. People who don't get enough exercise, who don't eat properly, don't take care of their body, don't get outside in fresh air, don't go into nature. And then they don't feel well. And so then what do? They complain to their doctor and then they get a medication and then they're not sleeping well because they have their phone on all night. And so there's this vicious cycle. So we have to start with care of the body, awareness. How am I caring for my body? Am I giving my body the nutrition it needs? Healthy, regular food. I know people who starve all day. They've got some issues or concerns. People who overeat emotionally, they'll come home or whatever and they'll eat far more than their body wants. Their body's actually saying, stop, please stop, we're full, please stop, but it's emotional eating. Now, I'm not saying this in a judgmental way at all. I'm putting this out as when we decide to become self-aware, these are the things we can become aware of. Is how am I treating my body? Does it need more exercise or does it actually need a little less? If you're that kind of person you're going to do 35K on that bike 5 times a week, whether your body's dropping off it or not, and your knees are screaming, okay, you're going to do that because that's what you said you were going to do. Okay. And so I remember many years ago, I had a wonderful woman, a client, and she was a competitive biker. And she would get these terrible migraines, and she even got, had a lot of special treatment until finally I convinced her to, do you think you have to ride at the front of the pack? These bike rides you do all the time. Have you ever considered asking your body what pace it wants to go to? And so she went through a whole process of learning to relate to see her competitive nature as being one thing and her body's needs, and start to see them as two separate things. And what did the competitive nature want, and what did the body need? And it was such an interesting and transformative experience for her, because what she did was she completely changed her sport. She found a sport that she loved, that she could use her competitive, kind of natural competitive instincts in, but in a completely different way that worked well for her. Guess what? She didn't have any more migraines. you know. So awareness, 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 awareness of the body, rest, sleep deprivation. Do you know what an issue that is? People not
I'm
getting enough
yeah,
sleep, people not getting enough rest. It's a big issue in our world, and far too much screens. And don't sleep with your phone. it's, it's not a good bed partner. Like
right.
seriously, really get a life. Okay. Say good night to your phone. Mwah, mwah. Sleep well, phone. Turn the thing off, or your iPad or your computer. And you know what? Don't have it in your bedroom. Okay, I get it if you're a student and resident and that's all you've got. You've got your
Right.
bed, you've got your desk, you got to button down and do it. But at least throw a cover over it, like a
Right.
parrot, So you put a
Go to
cover over
bed.
it at night so that it won't talk to you. Okay. I mean, seriously, I never had a bird because I like to see them flying free, but I've known people who have parrots, and you have to cover them at night. Otherwise, it's
Mhm.
like busy bee with the mouth all night. So, how much management of our life are we doing? How seriously are we taking this? So, getting those things that are so important for our well-being. And the mind, let's spend a little bit more time in the mind. What are we doing with our mind? Is our mind ours? Do we have, I don't want to say control over it, but do we know how to navigate? Okay, control isn't such a great word. Let's say, do
Mm.
you know how to navigate? Do you know how to navigate?
Do you think that navigation is something that is learned experience, and is
We
navigation?
all need a
Yeah,
teacher. We all need
right.
a teacher.
Well put.
The same way it's like doesn't matter whether it's hockey, you need a coach to tell you how to
Totally.
play the game, okay, or baseball, choose any sport you want. You want to learn how to use the computer or speak Spanish. We all need a program, we all need a teacher, we all need something. And so this is where meditation teachers or Tai Chi masters, or choose whatever it is that you want. Certainly they're all going to be working with the breath and focus and learning how to focus your mind, imagining that your mind is like a camera where you can choose where to focus it. So let's say you have a negative thought form. Do you have one on hand for me, or do you want me to invent one or borrow one
How
from
how
you?
about the
Negative
why,
thought.
like either why me or I'm not good enough.
Oh, okay. Okay. Low self-esteem.
There you go.
A low self-esteem. Okay. So low self-esteem thought form can have its own kind of body sensation to it. As soon as the thought
Mhm.
form starts, as soon as it gets triggered, often by an external event will trigger it. And then the body has a certain sensation and the thought form has its own story. It's the same way if you picked up any book, okay, choose any well-known book, or the Little Red Riding Hood,
Mhm.
okay, it's always the same story, right? This little
Yeah.
girl goes in the woods with a basket to visit her grand. I mean, it's always the same story. It doesn't change. Okay, there's a wolf. I mean, so it's the same with the thought forms. It's always the same story. And yet, what does that story give us? These stories that take us to painful places are trying, in the beginning, they're trying to serve a purpose. Okay, our soul is trying to revisit it because there's something that needs to be resolved or healed there. It won't get resolved or healed if we just go into a negative loop. I'm not good enough. Nobody likes me. I'm the bottom in the class. I'm picked last on the sports team. Those stories start young, right?
Right. Right.
I wore glasses or was shorter or taller or bigger or plumper or thinner or slower or whatever. Okay. And therefore, I'm not good enough. And it doesn't help if we have a family environment that reinforces that. And so, or a society or a culture out on the street or at camp or in the schoolyard that reinforces you are not good enough because you have fill in the blank. Okay. So here we have our low self-esteem story going. Now, the story can be useful with awareness. We say, wait a minute, I have this thought, and this thought comes from a belief that is painful, and I keep visiting it. because I don't realize that part of me is trying to see it differently and transform it. And if I can go into that story with the goal not to just wallow in it, poor me. Okay? If I can go into that story with something happened to me that was painful, and I need to grieve it, and I need to now reassure that part of myself. I need to, and here's where self-awareness, what are some things? We need to make a list of our strengths, or our gifts, and our shortcomings. Now, this isn't such an easy exercise, but if we're willing to do it, we can start to see ourselves instead of I'm the bad one, or I'm the lonely one, or I'm the not good enough one. Okay, we can start to see I had an experience where I felt this way. So the first thing that shifts is the identification with it. And that can only happen with awareness. A, oh, I have the story. B, the story makes me sad. C, the story is trying to teach me something about myself. Okay, so awareness, awareness, awareness. Okay, that happened to me, that's sad. I need to grieve that. And now I want to forgive the me that believed that. And I want to send light and forgive the people who, karma will take care of it. If you were bullied in the schoolyard, karma will take care of that one, you know. If you really feel you need to do something, then okay, write a letter to them, you know. Hey, Fred, remember elementary school, grade 4? You bullied me. Okay? I'm trying to forgive. You apologizing would help. Probably Fred would go, oh my God, thank you so much. I felt terrible as an adult that I ever did that to you. And then you become friends, go bowling together. Well, the bottom line is we don't have to live with these thought forms and the pain that they can cause us. We need to grieve the pain. And then we need to sit down and say, okay, who am I really? I'm not only that. I'm not only that poor bullied kid and from grade 4 or whatever. I'm more than that. So then we make a list of our strengths and shortcomings. And if we're not sure of them, I've actually had clients through the years who have no idea what their strengths and shortcomings are. And so you know what I tell them? Ask your family members and your best friends. You know, ask them, and they're going to give you some feedback and tell them, hey, don't be shy. I'm looking not just, I don't want flattery. What do you see as being my strengths? And if you're really unsure, then that's a really good clue that you need to get a little bit of professional help and support in that with an accredited professional who's going to be offering you some tools to help you get balance back into the who am I part. So, little test, George. Three of your qualities that you consider a quality or strength, okay, and 3 of your shortcomings. Or okay, only one shortcoming.
I could go on for days. I think the more that I focus on them, the more that I begin to, I just focus and be like, that could be, sometimes you think your strengths are your weaknesses, but before I meander.
Okay, that's a whole other conversation because a strength overused can become a weakness.
Yeah. So I think that some of my greatest strengths are my ability to listen. I would put that as probably my first one. Yes. My second one is the belief that I'm strong enough to begin it. That would be my second one. And my third one is that I guess my third strength that I would see is that my use of language. Those are the 3 that I hold, I at least have been holding for the last few years on, and really trying to continue to make them great. I would say that pride for me is probably one of my biggest downfalls. And I'm trying to find a way to incorporate that and maybe shine it up a little bit and retool it so it can be a strength.
Can I say a few words about your sharing? It's so precious. Thank you. I love it. Okay, the first one was that you can listen. It's not just that you can listen, it's that you really pay attention. It's not just listening, okay? It's you really pay attention and you really make that effort to understand what the other person is saying. So you bring presence and awareness into the listening. So it's better strength than you realize. Okay. And so that whole communication piece, okay, is a really excellent part of your gifts. And absolutely yes. And now can I say a little something? And yes, check out the
Please.
other ones. And I think you have many more strengths than you realize.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Many, many more. Ask your kids and ask your partners and your family members. I'm sure they'll say, Dad, you're a really great dad with this and this, and not so good over here. Okay, because it will
Sure.
be. Now, I want to give you a suggestion about pride.
Okay.
How about turning that into dignity?
I'm gonna write it down. My
Yeah,
pen. Thank you.
my great pleasure. It's. I'm not suggesting it's an easy convert, but
Right.
it's a doable convert,
Oh,
and it's actually it's the counterbalancing. I'm going to do some guesswork here. Could be off. But you've given me permission.
yeah.
Okay, since you offered up the I'm not good enough. Okay, I'm going to say that pride, a little bit of too much pride, okay, or came from the not good enough. And they're the opposite sides of the same coin. Okay, because that's how these things usually work. And addressing both of them, as soon as you address the I'm not okay, I'm not good enough, what have you, then the need for pride will decrease. Because the more you feel, I'm me, I love and accept myself, I'm aware of myself, as we go through this, this sequence of talking about the four cornerstones of self-care, you're going to see that can completely transform. That can completely transform. And again, that conversion of pride and pride is not bad, false pride or something else, but just a certain amount of pride in an accomplishment, pride at our children's accomplishments,
Yeah.
pride at having done a job well, passed an exam that was difficult, achieved something that we set out our goal to, and on the news, there was this 96-year-old woman who competed in a marathon. She came first in her category. I'm sorry, how many people over 95 are there running races? Okay, so she earned the pride in that, and so then coming back to the dignity, that's the key piece, having the sense of dignity. We don't need that kind of false pride or puppy pride, okay, when we have dignity, when we're comfortable with what we're saying, what we're doing, and our actions. We don't need that other stuff because we're good. We're good. I did this and I feel good. I was impeccable to my true self, and now I'm okay with this.
I'm curious. In the beginning, you spoke about when a child is born and they begin to develop a relationship with their awareness. And it seems too at different stages of life, and I can only speak to the ones that I've been in, but it seems that through midlife, it's almost like we're reborn again. Like I feel like there's this whole new form of awareness that's beginning to form around me. And it makes sense when you see the rockets of pride fall off and dignity becomes into orbit. Like you see these things changing. It's so. Have you found that to be true with awareness and age and different
Yes.
stages?
Yes, this is the cycle of life, and it has to do with so many things. First of all, when we're younger in development, we have those 4 stages of human development. Okay, there's dependency, counterdependency, independence, and then interdependency. And dependency is really under the age of 6, the core of it. But they continue in our culture because we keep children longer. They have longer educational cycles. So they stay much longer in school than in earlier times or in other cultures, you know. And, 100 years ago, if you had a high school education, wow, that was it. You could go out and get a great job. Okay. Like, forget it. You'll be stocking shelves in Walmart. Okay. And that's a tragedy because there's so much out there to learn. And we've narrowed the box down as to what's acceptable in our society, you know. And so if we look at those stages and we see every stage, there's going to be conceptual level changes in which how we perceive ourselves. This is basic human development. How we perceive ourselves in the world changes and changes and changes. Okay, and these conceptual level changes are really important as in our maturity as a human being and as a species on the planet. And so it's all tied into awareness, and it's tied into our moral compass,
Mm.
what we're taught about who we are and how to be in the world. If we're taught that it's just fine to litter out the car window and dump trash in the ocean, this is fine. Everyone does it. We can do it. What's the problem? If we're raised with that, then we may have to have an awakening, and maybe a school friend or somebody else, it cracks in and we go, wait a minute, I'm not okay with that. So there's so much to do with awareness and what we're taught and how we develop. But as to your question about cycles in life, yes, because our conceptual level is still changing.
Mm.
Who am I in the world now that
Mm.
I'm a father or a mother? Who am I now in the world now that I've graduated with my degree or my certificate or completed my program? Who am I now that I'm going into this life change? Who am I now? And so we have all of these, in the cycle of life and all of the challenges that we face, we have these ongoing opportunities to self-examine. Who am I now? And what are my options? And what are my decisions? And do I let them come from my higher self? Do I let them come from my beingness? Do I let them come from my intuition? This is another thing about self-awareness, is the development of our intuition. Now,
Mm.
I pulled out just a couple of quotes that I really love that, and this one is from Dr. Francis Vaughan. At any given moment, one is conscious of only a small portion of what one knows. Intuition allows one to draw on that vast storehouse of the unconscious knowledge that includes not only everything that one has experienced consciously or sublimely, but also the infinite reservoir of the collective unconscious, in which individual separateness and ego boundaries are transcended. Now, what's Francis talking about here? Dr. Vaughan is talking about that our intuition that's sort of wired into our beingness. It's very hard to describe. We can define it, but it's very hard to describe how it actually operates.
Mm.
Okay, the same way how the thinking processes work. You can do it from a neuroscientist view with MRIs working,
Right.
okay, and giving them a book to read, and then But the thing is intuition. We all have that. How do we develop it, and how do we keep it healthy?
Mm.
Okay, because it transcends those boundaries of separateness, in which our intuition feels as if it can connect into. You ever had an intuitive flash about something and then it happens, what we call déjà vu?
Yeah,
Okay, that's
absolutely.
all in the category of intuition. Okay, and intuition that something's happening, that something's going to happen. A sense, this kind of other way of sensing what's happening in the world. This is all to do with awareness. Now, a lot of people deny and block that,
Mm.
in the most simple of ways. Their intuition tells them that there's a problem, maybe with a colleague at work. There's a little inside
Yeah,
flashing orange
right.
light. Okay,
Yeah.
saying, I think there's something up with, Jane and the next department. Just a vibe or something. Okay. What do you do with that intuition? Do you deny it? Do you deny it? Or do you go, I think I'm going to ask Jane to go for lunch and
Mm.
sit down and sit with her and be with her and see if there's something we need to talk about? So finding ways to act respectfully and with dignity on intuition and how to develop it. And one of the problems with, our society and culture is we don't offer models for this.
Right.
We
There's
don't talk
zero.
about it in school. We don't talk about it at home. It's certainly not on social media. There's no, how to develop your intuition. There's a million videos of cats doing funny things and people setting themselves up in ridiculous situations so they
Mhm.
can have their 15 seconds or minutes of fame. But where's the conversation about this? How to be a human being? How to be a decent human being? Where's that conversation? So intuition and how do we develop intuition? Um, there's it's old, but it's absolute solid gold. Okay, the this immediate access to truth, and different quote here, Alice A. Bailey, one of the founding members of the Theosophy Foundation and Society. The immediate access to truth is the ultimate destiny of all human beings. It's a destiny for us to have an immediate access to the collective unconscious, that it's there within us, that we needn't feel overwhelmed or frightened by it, but just to know this is part of my human experience. It seems probable that someday the mind itself will lie as much below the threshold of consciousness as the instincts do now. We shall then function in the realm of the intuition and shall talk in terms of the intuition with as much facility as we now talk in terms of the mind and endeavor to function as mental beings. Isn't that?
Wow. Wow. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Okay. Right there. All we do.
Yeah.
Self-awareness. So, and this woman lived over 100 years ago.
Mm.
So can you imagine the awareness that some of these people were developing in that movement, that early movement of European Spiritism, when they were saying, "Hey, wait a minute, there's stuff that we don't understand with our mind, and science hasn't grasped it yet, but we intuit it, and we can feel it, and we can sense it, and we can actually prove in our own limited way that we can confirm it, you know." And so that ability to communicate with our own intuition, with ourself, in a way that our awareness of ourself is neither too tight nor too loose. We don't want to move to indulgence and,
Right.
me and my feelings all the time. And you know what I'm trying to say,
I
when we
do.
indulge in things, and that's the opposite of dignity, by the way, too. So, how can I own what's real for me, and how can I express it or share it in a way that will be appropriate and will be received and will bring benefit. There's so many different moving parts associated with this, such as intention and
Mm.
motivation, and what's the agenda in the heart when we do things with our intuition. Okay, I sense something now. How do I do this with ethics and with dignity? And so, okay, should we carry on? Where are we? We've talked about thought forms. Did you have
Mhm.
anything else you wanted to ask about that?
Maybe just briefly we can touch on the fear that lies in the relationship of understanding intuition, because I think like that's
Okay, good
kind of
one.
scary to realize that's happening, right?
Well, first of all, because our culture doesn't have the conversation,
Yes.
okay,
Okay.
for
Makes sense.
anybody whose intuition is awakening, I think we've talked, and if not here, then certainly those of you who are interested in volume 1 of my book, talking about mediumship and developing spirituality, because the conversation, the maps, it doesn't exist, the cartography, this
Mm.
aspect of the human experience doesn't exist really in our educational systems or in our family homes. Very few, unless you come from a culture where there was a lot of spirituality, then you bring it with you. Okay. South America, Brazil, full
Right.
of spirituality. India, full of spirituality. Eastern traditions, full of spirituality. They bring it with them. They talk on honor, indigenous people honor the ancestors. They honor they talk to the tree before they take the leaves. They honor the
Yeah.
river and go in the spring or the fall, sing songs to the river,
Mhm.
thanking it for the fresh water. And so for me, this is the purest form of spirituality, is honoring, you know, the nature around us and recognizing that consciousness is in everything. But we're not taught that in our society. And so when people have openings to it, it
Mhm.
can it can feel overwhelming, it can feel
Yes.
alarming, and the next thing you know, you have a diagnosis and maybe a pill with it. Okay? Instead of you being told that this is a very natural part of being human,
Mhm.
and but as long as we're there with very tight, narrow understandings in our systems, in our politics, in our governments, in our education systems, in our societies, it's very narrow. And, there needs to be, you hear me say this very often, a bridge between spirituality and transpersonal psychology and indigenous wisdom and modern science.
Yeah.
Building the bridges. And so modern science can, because there are people in modern science who are doing research, consciousness research, non-ordinary states of consciousness research on intuition. There are some doctors who work with true medical intuitives. These
Mhm.
people are people who have their intuition happens to be geared to the medical wellness of individuals. But they have to be tested and proven to be true, and they work with a team of people. So beware anyone listening, but people who claim to be a medical intuitive that are not working in with a medical doctor and a team of people whereby everything is working together as a team, and the person who is the medical intuitive has been acknowledged as such by research done with that person being able. So what that looks like is a doctor, the medical doctor doing all the medical tests. Okay, so they know this person has pancreatic cancer, for example, and then bringing the medical intuitive in and saying, okay, what do you see? And so they do this many times, and they say, okay, listen, 9 out of 10 times this person is absolutely dead on with what they're saying. Jack Cornfield
Mm.
tells this wonderful story about maybe you know it,
Mhm.
about, oh no, it's not Jack Cornfield, it's a Larry Dawsey story. Sorry, Larry. Okay, it's a Larry Dawsey story telling telling about how he, I think it might have been traveling with the Dalai Lama, and there was this opportunity he was visiting, and so they asked him, would he mind, he's a prescriber, would he mind going and sitting and being with a patient, and that it would be great teaching for the grand rounds. And if you know what grand rounds is when all the people in the department together travel around, or the key people in the department travel around to learn something on the wards and in the rooms. So they're learning it together. They're the young residents, and are learning, from the people who have the skills and the experience. And so this master of Oriental medicine went in, and he quietly sat with the person, and he asked permission, and and all he did was put his hand and listen to the pulse. And he sat there in complete meditation and silence. Minutes pass. Of course, all the residents, the young residents, are kind of itching. He's not doing anything. So he's going to do his pulse. Is he going to do something else? Okay. Afterwards, he bows to the patient and thanks the patient, and he makes his way out. And so they ask him, well, what did you see? And he said, well, his heart, his pulse is wrong. And he completely described what was happening through the pulse in the heart. And he says there's a problem in the heart. And he described what he saw in the heart based on the flow of blood and the pulse. He was 100% accurate. There were faulty valves in the person's heart, and exactly what he described in his own different words, not typical medical terminology, okay, was exactly what was happening. And so this is a deep intuition, okay? And some people have it in art, and some people have it in music, and some people have it in medicine, and some people have it in engineering, okay? They just know that the structure they've designed for this bridge is going to work. Okay, there's something inside of them that says, wow, this is going to work. Okay, they just know that how they've put the pieces together and where the struts are and the supports and the suspension and everything, and they know the rush of the river, and they went and talked to the river and looked in the traffic, and it's like, yeah, it's going to work, you know. And so we all have our own individual intuition, and it is only through self-awareness that we get to clear, you know, if our body's well and healthy, our ability to listen to our inner world and our intuition is much more possible. If our mind is clear of thought forms and silly old stories, okay, then it's less cluttered. Okay, our mind is more available for new thinking and for positive thinking and for going forward with what our intuition is telling us. Old stories slow us down. They sap our energy. They drain us. That's not so good.
It's interesting to see the way in which we explain the intuitive process for an engineer, for someone who is called to medicine, or someone who is into the world of arts. And it seems to me the same way that one of those people can say, yes, this bridge will work, is the same way an individual who's developed the intuition with themselves can say, this thing that I'm building in my life is going to work. It's cool to get to see it the way you've told that story. It helps me internalize it a little bit. And I think it does for the listeners as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Just one more thing about
Yeah.
thought, you know, is thoughts are powerful. There's a ton of research on this, you know, ton of research. Let's just take the placebo effect. Okay. They're getting an inert pill. There's no medication in it. And yet they declare that they feel better. Their blood pressure goes down, etc. So the placebo effect is the power of thought and hope. Okay. And so that exists in everything. It exists in everything. But where does that become, where does the power of positive thinking, which is good, go drift into the power of magical thinking, which is not good? Okay, it's one thing when your 4-year-old says that Teddy can talk and has feelings, okay, and Teddy's not happy right now, because that's appropriate for the age, you know, or the child that believes that maybe there's a unicorn living at the bottom of the garden, or okay, so that kind of magical thinking at a certain age, and we support it until, you know, it shifts, okay? But when we're an adult, okay, we have to be careful of that. There's a kind of a new age philosophy about how, you know, how you can think, imagine, dream your way into, you know, just stick that photograph of that house, BMW, whatever it is that you want in your fridge, and just keep imagining it. You know, this is the power of attraction. You have to attract. So here we have a basic truth that there actually is a power of attraction. It does exist, okay, but not in that way. That has been materialized in a way that becomes dangerous to people, literally dangerous to people, because if they think they can just think away their cancer, or they can just, now by staying positive, I'm a cancer survivor, so I can speak to it. It was 30 years ago. I'm all good, thank you. But I certainly used talking to my immune system and talking to my body and giving it all the love and positive imagery, and we're, you know, but at the same time, I saw my oncologist, I had my surgery, you know, so it's positive and hopeful thinking is part of an overall plan. It's not the overall plan. And as I always answer these people who've gone to the fanatical, idealistic place with it, I said, how is that working for the people in fill in the blank Somalia who have no food? or no water or no medicine? Do they just get to imagine food and water and medicine and it's going to arrive? Show me how that works, because I don't see how it can work. So thoughts can be powerful, and learning how to use them for service, for good, not to hurt ourselves through rehashing old sorry stories, not through deluding ourselves through denial with silly, hyper-positive fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
and not using them against other people. So awareness. So attributed to the Buddha, we are formed and molded by our thoughts. Those whose minds are shaped by selfless thoughts give joy when they speak or act. Joy follows them like a shadow that never leaves them. Attributed to the Buddha. We don't know if he actually said it or not, but it's a good one.
Yeah, it's beautiful to think about.
And the other one, again, from a friend of mine, was thoughts are our mind is solidified thoughts.
Mm.
What kind of thoughts do you want to have in your mind? So self-awareness. So encouraging all the listeners to develop a technique. There's so many of them. Choose the one that feels right for you. Meditating, martial arts, simple practices, breathing techniques, relaxation techniques, working with a professional teacher, guide, all helpful. And please read my books. They'll help.
Yes, to everybody listening, do yourself a huge favor and check out the 2-volume set. The links will be below. And it's one of the things that I really love about your books is that while they can be read straight through, like the one I have in front of me has got tons of, bookmarks and different. Just sometimes I'll be thinking about something and then I'll be like, oh, let me check out chapter 13, or this person said that. Let me go back. It's like a guidebook that you can go back, and I keep finding these quotes that somehow I didn't see before. I'm like, how did I not read that before? I got to underline it with a different color underliner because I had it in a yellow, but it should be in a pink, so they're really great books, everybody, is what I'm trying to say. And it's a book that you'll use from time to time. And it just happens to be on my shelf when I'm thinking about something, or they're really great books. And I would recommend everybody not only watch the podcast, but go to your site. And if you love the podcast, if you love the words she's speaking, then check out the books, because it's something that can be in your bookshelf for you, your kids, and it's just a great resource. I'm really thankful that you've written them.
Oh, thank you. Well, they are guidebooks.
Yeah.
It's not a beach novel,
Right.
And it's not just a, hey, here's my story.
Right.
Although my editor said I had to put more of my story in, which I did. And so it is what it is, but they are guidebooks. You can read them through, or you can just pick them up and put them down, or you can go to a certain chapter that kind of tweaks something that you want to understand about. And I also have on my website, there's a lot of lectures and podcasts that I offer free for educational purposes, some other publications. And, on that note, George, it's always amazing to hang out with you. I hope today's been fun for you and for the listeners. And next time we will be talking about self-love. So the kind of core pillars, the foundation of self-care: self-love, self-awareness, self-love, self-respect, self-responsibility. And when we really address those 4 aspects and set our intentions to take care of ourselves in a way that is healthy and balanced, then we have the best possible way to go forward in our life in a way that is as healthy as it can possibly be for ourselves and for those who love us and are around us.
Yeah, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. I really enjoy our conversations, and it seems so timely right now to begin to talk about the self. There's so many people that are finding themselves for the first time, and maybe the way you begin to find yourself is to be aware, which we kind of began covering today. It's so amazing to me. So, Dr. Jessica, we've talked about your website. We talked about the books. Do you have anything coming up that people can maybe look forward to?
Well, yes, actually, I think I'm just doing a freshening up and a redo of my
Nice.
website. So I'm not sure. I haven't even looked, but it may say under construction because we're doing a refreshing and adding some more information. Some people might be interested to know that at the end of June, and I will put that up on my LinkedIn, and I will. So those of you who are connected to me through LinkedIn, I look forward to reconnecting with you. If you aren't, please do send me an invite or something. But on the 27th of June, there's the Canadian Association for its Public Health Association. So the Canadian Public Health Association has a conference, and there's a few of us who will be speaking at it. And this is quite big. This is the first time that the Canadian Public Health Association has invited people from the entheogen and psychedelic field to actually have a conversation, to people who work in public health. And so if you are working in public health and you're interested, then please, I will try and by the end of the day today or latest tomorrow, get that link up to that conference. And it's going to be covering, different people from the policy angle are going to be speaking. But again, it's going to be a very, I will mostly be speaking about the paper that we published. I was the lead author on entheogens and psychedelics proposal for a new paradigm. And so it was making recommendations about education, credentialing, and ethics, and how this kind of what people are calling the renaissance of psychedelics, these are the things that really need to be considered. And so I will get that up, that the link to the conference information, and hopefully people will join in and be part of the conversation about public health. And because it needs to happen, we need to be having these conversations and informing the policies that are driving public health. And educating the people. As you mentioned before, I worked, it's now 23 years that I've been working with Health Canada, the Office of Controlled Substances. It was 17. I was issued in 2006 an exemption in principle, but we got stuck in a little export permission from Brazil, import from Canada, catch-22, and then politics changed and governments changed, and things happened and time got lost, and then we had to go through a whole new chapter from 2014 to 2017 of educating the government. And please notice that at no point, that for me it was always a diplomatic negotiation of providing science and research and reason, of being willing to sit with the government and simply, here's education, here's science, here's research, here's who we are, here's what we're doing. We're totally available to work with you to develop regulations that will satisfy the needs of Health Canada, at the same time respect our practices. We never sued the government. We had no desire to, and we would never want to. Okay. And so I encourage everybody out there who are working in this field is sit at the table and be in the discussion. Be willing to work with the government in a way that's respectful and diplomatic. And, it may take time. Be patient. But
yeah, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can only imagine the people that are curious to understand the procedure that you went through to make it happen. I see so much happening in this, unfolding right now in this space, that
Yeah.
so thank you for bringing that up. I'm sure that, I'm sure as a courtesy, you're probably like, hey, everybody's probably flooding in trying to figure out, how did you do it? So it's probably a good public service announcement.
It's been a constant stream. People are constantly trying to reach through me personally, which, when I ask people, please don't. I'm not a shortcut to our church, and I'm not a shortcut.
Right.
I'm doing everything that I'm doing for about non-ordinary states of consciousness and trying to educate. And, I care about community. I care about nature. And I care about the study of consciousness and the understanding of it. And at the same time, I don't have a magic wand in my back pocket that I can magically open doors and do things. People have to be. The example I used with Health Canada, with the office, a while ago in some meetings when we were talking about what we call ENP, entheogens and psychedelics in Canada. And we had a series of meetings with the director and senior staff from different departments, talking about our recommendations and what they felt they were able to take in and implement and agree with, and what was out of their scope,
Right.
and is more in the provincial and territorial scope as far as medical things go. And so very interesting. But what I said was, it's kind of like when when the car was just first being developed, and the first cars were on the road, and everybody was saying, oh, well, never going to replace the horse and buggy, And so, then more cars are on the road. And then all of a sudden somebody said, maybe we better figure out a way that, like, traffic rules, they didn't exist. Maybe traffic rules. And so stop signs got developed, and red lights got developed, and driving on one side of the road versus the other, and lines down the middle. And all of these things grew because of the invention of cars that came on the road. And the next thing you knew, there were cars everywhere. And then they had to develop things like driver's licenses and driver's permits and criteria around who could drive and when they could drive. And all of these regulations came well after the first cars. And so that was the example that I gave to, Health Canada, which is, hazard cars everywhere. You guys have to develop regulations, because right now there's a lot of cars out on the road, and there's no rules and regulations. Otherwise, other than you're not allowed to drive the cars on the road. It's too late. They're already there. And so that's the reality. People need to be willing to understand the current regulations, be willing to work, to be part of the solution.
It's
part of the solution and how to do that.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other conversation.
I know.
Self-awareness. Okay. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. Always
The pleasure's
enjoyed
all mine.
hanging out with you.
The pleasure's all mine. I can't wait till we continue the next part of this series, and really looking forward to it. Do you have another minute? I had another question.
Sure.
And I was curious. And when we begin talking about, and I think it ties together the idea of awareness and regulations. And it's this idea that there's never a perfect time for something to happen. And it does seem that we find ourselves in sort of a time where a lot of people need a lot of help. What are your thoughts on some of the credentialing as far as facilitators and coaches? Is that something that is messy but necessary, or is it something that we should be trying to foster in a different way?
Well, that's a really big question. And I think we skirted around it a few times, but let's try and answer that and address that in this moment, because it's a question that absolutely needs to be put on the table over and over again until enough voices have joined into the conversation. Right. So part of what I've been doing since we published that paper, what was it, April 2021 now, so nearly 2 years ago, is the contributors. We had 20 something contributors, all of whom were in the field one way or another: education, academia, medicine, spiritual care providers, researchers, all of them within their own right, well recognized for their work. We had research chairs in their field. So really highly respected people were willing to say, I'm happy to contribute and share my thoughts, and because of the importance of this. It's such an important conversation. We're happy to say that people in England picked up our paper and want to do the same thing in England. In Australia, they picked it up and said, hey, look, here's some things, let's align with that. Currently, there are now, in this last 2 years, they've been developing in a number of universities programs that will be credentialed through the university. And this is really and it's a slower process for the universities, because what is the criteria? It's the same if we look back to, when did medical doctors first start being recognized as medical doctors? And what kind of examinations did they have to do? Well, you know what? They apprenticed. People apprenticed, and then they went to some kind of a school and they were apprenticing with other doctors, and they got a cadaver to cut up, and we off for the races, and now you're a doctor. Okay. And it became more complicated and more complicated the more technology and science and medicine developed. It became more complicated. But But where we are now is that there's a, there's an enthusiasm,
Mm.
a big enthusiasm that part of it is in the community and part of it is enthusiastic, let's say, healthcare professionals who are, who think that, based on some research to date, that, there's a real possibility that certain psychedelics and or entheogens could be really helpful in certain areas. I'm all behind that. I'm all behind in the research and the, I'm all behind in, if we look at indigenous practices who've been using sacred plants. No, they haven't been using MDMA and they haven't been using LSD and they haven't been, but they've been using ayahuasca and ibogaine and, other sacred plants and psilocybin mushrooms, the mushrooms. So they've been using this for centuries and millennia. And so all of their knowledge about entheogens, sacred plants, should be such an important part of the conversation. And that's been left out. I'm delighted to see that MAPS and Shakruna and ICEERS, Ben Delonen and ICEERS are doing important talks and writing papers and publishing and podcasts on that topic. Because this is essential. And at the same time, it's the universities need to have the conversation with the Indigenous people to make sure that Indigenous ways of knowing are going to be used. And then the researchers and the clinicians need to be part of that to make sure that what they're learning in research is implemented into what actually is going to be taught. This needs a large conversation.
Yeah.
It's a large conversation. It's not just like a pharmaceutical company that's bringing out a new pain medication or a new medication for diabetes or for high blood pressure or something, where they run some tests and they get, okay, it helps, some side effects, here you go, and it's on the market. This is talking about working with people's consciousness. This is about talking about awakening people in very strong and big ways. It's not just like a something. It's not just a medication that you're going to take that you say, okay, my joint pain's a lot better when I take this. This is something else entirely. And so how to work in non-ordinary states of consciousness, how to help people integrate in non-ordinary states of consciousness, how to do all of that. And so it's a very big conversation. And on the one hand, you have people who are saying everyone should have it anywhere, anytime, whatever they want. We're all fine to just do it by ourselves at home in our own living room. There's other of us who say, there are some of you who may be able to do that and be, not everyone's Terence McKenna. Sorry. Sorry. Not everyone's Terence McKenna.
That's well put.
And yes, there are people who say, I'm just fine, but they can't extrapolate that across the population. There's some people who are fine with free diving. They don't put on a tank and whoosh, down they go. Not everybody's okay with that. So, we can't, just because we have an experience, we can't extrapolate it across the whole population that because I'm okay doing this, then everybody's okay doing this. I'm okay eating peanuts. Peanuts is fine with me. I can eat all natural,
right?
Completely natural, crunchy peanut butter on a slice of toast. Yummy. Okay, other people have anaphylactic shock. So we're all different. So the people who say it's for everybody and it should be completely decriminalized and everybody should be able to take what they want because we're all entitled to our own something of consciousness. Okay, you're mixing up with your rights with safety. Sure, we have the right to consciousness. We have right to explore consciousness, but you're forgetting individual safety and well-being. And that's the main interest of Health Canada. I can only speak to Canada and not any other country, is the health and safety of the people. Before they say, okay, yes, you can do this, they need to know. They've learned from tobacco and alcohol. Let's just put that in perspective. They've learned from tobacco and alcohol, which are legal because they were so prevalent in society, then prohibition didn't work. And so they struggle, which is, how do we make people aware that these things aren't healthy for you? And now they have this opportunity, and okay, here's something that maybe not healthy for you or not healthy for everyone or could be dangerous. And yes, some people have died, and yes, some people have walked out of windows and thought they could fly. And oh, why would we be saying it's okay for everybody to do that everywhere? We have to have a little compassion for our government. They would be the first people to be blamed if there's something that happens. You should see, I just got my renewal for our church, a four-year renewal on our exemption process. Pages and pages of definitions and tight little narrow agreements that have to be made on what happens and what doesn't happen and where it happens and when it happens and how it happens. Okay?
It's fascinating to think about that, the level of conversation. In some ways, I could see how a conversation about a conversation about the laws around plant medicine, entheogens, and psychedelics opens up a broader conversation to the way we treat each other in this world. It's so fractal in a way, and it makes me want to cry. It's so beautiful to think that, hey, this idea that we're talking about has radical possibilities for transformation of consciousness. And I mean, not just you and I, but the world around us. Its magnitude is gargantuan.
Yes, the possibility is, but then let's just look at every great teacher that came on the planet who radically wanted to change people's consciousness.
Right.
I mean, poor old Buddha, he took quite a rap, didn't he? And still does, you know, and Jesus, I mean, really, if he arrived today, he'd be horrified at what's being done in his name. Okay. He would say, whoa, 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 I never said that. I never proposed that. What are you guys doing? You know? And so we can look at all the great teachers who came and said, wake up, wake up, wake up. Love yourself, love nature, love life, be good to people. You know, Moses came down from the mountain with the 10 commandments. Don't do this and don't do that because it's destructive and it hurts everyone. What did everybody do? Some people said, oh yeah, those things are good. I'm going to do my best to follow them. And other people said, nah, not interested. It interferes with my selfish agenda. Do you think, just for, we shouldn't go into politics. Do you think Mr. Putin is following the 10 commandments?
I don't,
well, you know, all you have to do is look around the world, choose any other kind of dictator you want. Okay, choose any unhealthy, unstable situation around the world and say, okay, are those people using self-awareness and consciousness to discuss and face their disagreements or their differences? Or is it just that age-old story of denial? Instead of awareness of, oh, wait a minute, I believe that God looks like this, and we reach God by doing that, by eating these foods and wearing these outfits, and you believe that God exists in a slightly different form, and you eat a slightly different food and wear a slightly different outfit, and your festival days are a little bit different, but you know what, it's okay, because that's so good, we all love God. You know, like, why couldn't that be our reality? Why couldn't that be our reality? Instead of, you know, our God is a good God, your God is a bad God, so we're going to get rid of you and your bad God. And that's the story of the human experience. So I'm not quite on the same page with you as to, I'm on the same page with the potential. I am not on the same page with there's a whole world waiting to be transformed and awoken. I think there's a lot of people who, like in the movie Matrix, plug me back in.
Right.
Give me a great life. I'd like to be, what did he want? A Hollywood producer with a nice house overlooking the ocean. So
it's beautiful. I think sometimes seeing that, trying to imagine how things are on a cosmic scale and what is possible, ultimately leads me to the idea of, okay, now go back in. Like, here, I look at it. Like, yes, George, it's that big. It can be. Okay, now go back in and just do the work inside.
And now ground it. because
Yeah.
it's
Yes.
the
That's so well said.
grounding that people forget to do. Hey, I have this
Yes.
image of it's all love and oneness and you. Okay, that's what Stan Grof would call a badly integrated fourth matrix experience. Very badly
Right.
integrated. He
Right.
uses St. Francis of Assisi as a perfect example of a bad example of fourth matrix. You know, when St. Francis, his father was a merchant, I think it was rugs or something, goods, household, whatever. And he has this moment of transfiguration in church one morning, and he goes home and he opens the doors of the warehouse of his father's warehouse, not even his own, and decides to give everything away. Badly integrated fourth matrix experience. We can be one. We can live in peace. Okay, I'm going to give away dad's goods.
Yeah.
You know? So, and this is the same that's happening now. People have these awakenings.
Right.
Wow, we can be healthy and well, and we can all love, and we're all connected in its cosmic consciousness. And then I'm just going to give fill in the blank, MDMA, psilocybin, LSD, whatever it is. I'm going to just give it to everybody, and everyone's going to wake up. No.
Mm.
That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, it's been grand.
I know.
Always.
Yes. I love
I
talking
hope
to you.
we walked around that question a little bit enough
Absolutely.
Okay. So a
Well,
joy to be with you. Looking forward to the next time. And
agreed.
anybody who wants to reach me, you can reach me at www.rev, R-E-V-D-R, Jessica Rochester.
Ladies and gentlemen, check it out. Go to the show notes. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did, as much as I did. It was just mind blowing. I love it. Thank you so much, everybody listening. I hope you have a beautiful day. I hope you love everyone around you and you begin to be more self-aware. That's all we got for today. Ladies and gentlemen, aloha.